I'm Mo. The minute that I sat down to film, it got super dark and stormy out, so it looks a little crazy. Anyway, no one cares. Hi, I'm Mo. It is time for the mid-year book freakout. Fun fact about my channel, the first video that I ever did was, for booktube, was the mid-year book freakout, but I did it in October of 2020. So it was a video that I watched a million times when I first started watching booktube, and I really wanted to do it, but then I was super late, so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it anyway. It was basically the mid-year of my reading year because I didn't really start reading until March, so I was like, hey, booktube is all about doing what you love and talking about books, so it doesn't really matter when you do it. This year I'm doing it in July. Most people do it in June, but I wanted to have a full 6 months of reading under my belt before doing the tag, so it was much more a mid-year tag for me. I don't know who did this tag originally, but I think the person who did this tag originally is no longer on booktube. All the booktube people have to say a little thank you to the originator of this tag, even if you don't know who they are, because this is one of the most beloved tags on booktube. Question number 1 is best book you've read so far this year. So I went back and forth on this question actually because I think that I have read a lot of amazing books this year so far, and my favorite might not be the best written, and the best book as far as like amazing piece of literature might not have been my absolute favorite. But I finally settled on Colson Whitehead's The Nickel Boys as the best book I've read so far this year. This is about a young man who has many aspirations and dreams which are kind of all put on hold when he is arrested of a crime that he didn't commit, and he is sent to a reform academy. This is based on true events, and the events and happenings at the Reform Academy are horrific, heartbreaking, and it's a story about injustice, it's a story about hope, and it's a story about redemption in some ways. Children who were taken away from their families and reformed, and many of them were abused, if not all of them, and many of them were murdered. These are all true events that happened in our country that a lot of people don't know about, but in this book, it is a fictionalized version, which is good. It's almost a softer way to learn more about our actual American history. I definitely highly recommend this book. I'm super excited to read more of Colson Whitehead's work. So that was a little bit of a down note to start this on, but I do think that this is one of the best written books, and I think it was one of my favorite books. It was incredibly moving, incredibly powerful, but it also was hopeful. I was worried to read this book at first because I thought it would be too violent, too graphic for me, and it was violent and it was graphic, but it was also a great book. Question number 2 is best sequel you've read so far. I have read quite a few sequels, but I'm gonna go with Confess Fletch. So I read Fletch earlier this year, which is the first in a detective series written in the 70s. I think the sequel is not better as far as like more fun, because probably the first book is the more fun out of the two I've read so far, but I think it furthers the development in a way, like it's almost like a reset, because the first book is fun, it's fast, it's offensive, very 70s. The second book is much more of a real book. There's a lot more going on, there's a lot more interesting things that happen with the characters, and a lot more character development. So I'm interested to see where the rest of this series goes. I think there's like 7 or 8 books in this series. Question number 3 is what new release haven't you read yet that you want to read? You know that on this channel we don't really read new releases that often. We have read some new releases in 2021, but I am mainly a backlist booktuber, and so new releases are not really my thing. Bennet's The Vanishing Half. I really want to read this one particularly because of several other books that I've read this year. I read Passing and I read Sula, and I think that this book will go really well with those books, and I'm interested to see it. I wasn't interested in this book until reading Passing, but the plot lines are so similar, and I think they kind of build on one another, and I would be really interested to see them in juxtaposition. So I'm interested in reading this newer release that came out in 2020. Question number 4 is the most anticipated new release for the second half of the year. Like I just said, I don't really read new releases, so this isn't really a question for me. A new release that just came out last month in June that I'm really interested in is Nghi's retelling of Great Gatsby. I've actually only heard bad things about it, but I'm interested to read it just because I've never read a Gatsby retelling. It looks really beautiful, and everybody says that Nghi is a really great writer. Question number 5 is biggest disappointment. So this very easily goes to contemporary mysteries. I read 3 contemporary mysteries so far in 2021, and I kind of hated all of them. They were all pretty well renowned. They were all pretty well received. I can only talk about 2 of them because one is still for a secret TBR, but I read The Wife Upstairs and I read The Woman in Cabin 10. Both really gorgeous covers. I love The Woman in Cabin 10. It has like a shiny water on window look, which is amazing. They were all really, really big disappointments. They were all borderline offensive to women, I think. They had unreliable narrators, but that just kind of was like code for saying that you can't trust women and don't believe anything they ever say. They also all took very ableist looks at things that women suffer from, like alcoholism and anxiety. In these particular novels, women were discounted because of those afflictions. Those were definitely my biggest disappointments. Now, will I never read another contemporary thriller or mystery? I probably will. I actually have 3 or 4 pretty recent contemporary thrillers on my shelves that I want to get to. So hopefully a contemporary mystery thriller will change my mind. If you know of a contemporary mystery thriller that will change my mind, please leave it in the comments down below. I would love to read a more modern mystery that will not disappoint me. Question number 6 is biggest surprise. I am going to go with The Murders of Molly Southborne. This book was one of the first books that I picked up solely on the recommendation of BookTube, and it's extremely short novella, and I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it was really strange and interesting and messed with my head, and I still think about it all the time. It was definitely a close one for my favorite book of the year as well. I really did enjoy it because it definitely ended in a way that leaves you wanting more. Question number 6 is favorite new author. This can be a new to you author, or this can be a debut author. I don't think I read any debut authors this year, but I just finished Sula by Toni Morrison, and I've never read any Toni Morrison before, and this book was amazing, and I'm super excited to read more Toni Morrison. I can't confidently say that she's a new favorite author just because I've only read one of her books, but I can confidently say that I will definitely be reading a lot more of her books in the future, and I have a feeling she's going to be a new favorite author. Question number 8 is newest fictional crush. And like many booktubers, I don't get fictional crushes really that much. I like characters a lot. Question number 9 is newest favorite character, which kind of goes hand in hand with question number 8, and I don't have a newest favorite character either. I read a lot of characters that I loved. I loved Elwood Curtis from the Nickel Boys. I loved Molly from The Murders of Molly Southborne. I loved a lot of these characters, but I don't think I have a new favorite. When I was reading these questions, no character jumped to mind, and since I don't get fictional crushes, that's a no-go as well. Question number 10 is book that made you cry. Let me tell ya, I have cried a lot at books this year so far. I don't know if I cried at a single book last year, and I've already cried at like 3 or 4 books this year. I will use Out of Africa for this book prompt because I bawled for like 100 pages at the end of this book. I cried and cried and cried, and then I cried some more. I also cried a ton reading The Nickel Boys. I basically closed this book and cried for 30 minutes straight. I've been crying a lot. Could be the state of the world, could be my mental state, could be that these books are super moving and awesome. Question number 11 is book that made you happy. And I'm going to go with The Loved One. The Loved One by Evelyn Waugh could have worked for favorite new author, but again, I've only read one of Evelyn Waugh's books, but I loved this book. It definitely made me happy. It could have also been for biggest surprise because I had no idea what to expect when going into this book. I had no idea what it was about. It was a dark, satirical look at death and life in California, and it was awesome. Question number 12 is most beautiful book that you've bought or received this year. I'm going to go with the Book of Tea, which I bought secondhand, and I didn't know it was going to be this beautiful hardcover with very lovely cover, and it has some beautiful, simple print illustrations, and it came in this very cute box. I also really loved The Loved One. With this fun little illustration and sprayed edges. How great is that? Question number 13 is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And I think the typical booktube answer is all of them. I'm really looking forward to reading The Vanishing Half and comparing it to Passing. I'm really looking forward to reading some more Toni Morrison. I'm really looking forward to reading some more Colson Whitehead. I'm really looking forward to a lot of the books that I put on my summer TBR, and I am slowly getting through those. Since we have an extra booktube spin book, that's one that I'm really excited to get to for the end of the year. I think that kind of covers it. I am not going to tag anyone in this tag because this is definitely a universal booktube, and every booktuber should do this, whether you are super new or whether you've been around a long time. This is a great way to kind of go look back and see your reading for the first half of the year, and also maybe share some books that you haven't talked about as much. I hope you do this tag, and if you want to answer the questions in the comments below, feel free to do that as well. So we'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much. Bye. This book was... Oh, it's raining.